We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Sunday. God, the weeks go by quickly. And we have a guest on the show, and I'm glad he's here today. Eric is with us. Eric from Iowa, analytical Iowan, and Eric was on the live or TikTok live that we did. And it's sometimes hard when we have a number of people who are kind of everlasting guests on the show because you got a bunch of people who have things to say, important things to say, and it's hard to get a word in edgewise, even for me. So we welcome you to the show, and this time you've got free reign to talk about anything you want to talk about.
Well, thanks for having me, but I like being on the lives, even if I'm not saying a whole lot, just being involved in the actual conversation. It's much easier to jump in when you're, in the box and you're able to just say whatever you want than try to type it out because by the time you get to a comment in the chat, 10 minutes have gone by. We've moved three topics from there. And,
Yeah.
it's just easier.
And what are your thoughts about the bringing in random guests to ask questions and make comments? I personally like it, but curious what you think.
No, I like it too. You get some interesting perspectives. You hear from people you might not normally hear, or comments that you'd miss in the chat. And sometimes you can kind of direct a response toward one person for a few moments and actually solve or explain whatever they're wondering about more directly. Whereas because you're having that back and forth where you're talking to them versus waiting for them to come back in the chat with their next comment, and you're trying to keep the chat moving, and it's easier. I do like it.
I do too. We've been pretty lucky not to get too many Trumplefucks coming through, and I've been impressed by the level of intelligence of everybody coming in. They've got good comments, good questions, and they certainly add to the live. So I welcome them, and I'm looking forward to doing more of those, assuming after the 19th that TikTok is still with us. There's a lot of shit going on around about TikTok. We had the Supreme Court arguments. Of course, the media came out and they said, oh, it doesn't look good for TikTok. But I don't take what the media says very seriously because they tend to go for the dramatic and the negative, and you really don't know what the fuck is really going on based on what they tell you.
Yeah, I would agree. And we saw what happened with the election. The
Yeah.
media wanted the horse race. They didn't tell you the full story all the way through because they wanted you to tune in and watch. And the media doesn't like TikTok. They
Right.
don't like TikTok at all. They don't like people like us who make videos, and even the larger creators, and even you or me, you know, they don't like the big platform creators, the under the desk news and people like that are
Yeah.
actually doing stuff, because that takes away, in their mind, viewership. But I did look to the media a little bit just to get an idea of how the oral arguments went. And I'd say it's very hard to say from what the oral argument questions were as to which way any of the justices are going to go. Um, a couple of them seem to be more inclined to take the government side, but then you had a couple surprises, like Neil Gorsuch was asking very poignant questions about speech and seemed to be very keyed in on this idea that it's limiting free speech.
Right.
Um, which kind of, we think of Gorsuch as just a shill for Trump because Trump appointed him, but occasionally he does surprise you.
Yeah, he does surprise you, and them trying to second guess what's going to happen based on what they said doesn't always work. And I've said this earlier on a TikTok. I said what we're looking at here is basically a dick measuring contest. I mean, the U.S. government came out and said we want you to sell TikTok. They didn't want to ban it, but they had to use that as kind of the threat. If you don't sell it, we're going to ban it. Um, and then after it passed through Congress and we get closer and closer to this, and TikTok doesn't bite and doesn't sell it, they're getting a little nervous because you're going to disenfranchise 174 million people and billions of dollars of commerce that runs across that app all the time. There's going to be some pissed off motherfuckers, and a lot of them may be Republicans too, especially the big money people. And Donald Trump is going to come in, and now he's all for TikTok, maybe largely due to because one of his buddies is a big time investor into TikTok. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. Now, on the other side, you got TikTok saying, well, if we don't get our answer, we're going to shut it down on the 19th. They're basically calling the government's bluff because they know if it shuts down, the government, the people who shut it down, are going to look really bad and it's going to cause problems. But at the same time, if TikTok shuts it down, they lose tons of money and value in their app. So both these two have a whole lot to lose if it shuts down.
Oh, they both do. And one of the things that I keep bringing up with it, and I don't think they were allowed to mention it during the oral arguments, but we, as far as I know, we have never seen a law that targeted one specific company and said, by law, you must sell,
Right. No, it's never happened.
or you cannot do business. I have never seen a law. You know, we've heard about like antitrust, and they've used like antitrust laws to bust up some of the big companies. What was it? Bell Telephone that became AT&T and Sprint, and or when they busted that up, you know,
US West
in
and
the
all that
80s, I
stuff. Yeah.
think. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, they've done that before. Where it said, okay, no, you're too big. I think that's how we got ABC from. I think they split ABC or CBS and NBC up a bit, and we got ABC out of the deal. They've done,
Yeah.
but never specifically against one company. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do a secondary appeal after that, um, and maybe file a different lawsuit on those grounds by itself. Wouldn't be the first time we've had the same law challenged under multiple different reasons.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised here in the next 6, 7 days. I don't know if we'll get a decision out of the Supreme Court, but I've been saying it wouldn't surprise me if the Supreme Court comes out with a stay and says, okay, you know what, we're not going to prevent the law from taking effect until July 1st when we issue our decision, or you know,
Right.
August 1st to get us to the end of the thing. Because one of the justices, I think it was Gorsuch, asked about that if they could do a stay. Asked, I think it was the Solicitor General for the United States, and said, "Do you believe we have the authority to grant a stay in this and prevent it from being put in place?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, of course you do. You're the Supreme Court."
Right.
So I think that might happen. The one thing I don't think is going to happen is Donald Trump being able to just say, well, don't enforce the law, don't enforce the ban.
He can't do that, but they did say if they're trying to work out a sale, he can extend it 90 days. And so could Biden for that matter. But there has to be
Right.
some kind of sale in the progress or some presumed sale in the progress. So it can be done, but there are particulars to it that have to be in place before they can do that.
Well, yeah, there's the 90-day extension for a potential sale, but then some people were saying, well, Donald Trump will just tell the DOJ when he's in office, don't enforce the ban, don't go
No,
after
he can't
and
do
the
that.
justices were like, no, we if you're hoping on that, there's an issue. Like they took issue to that idea, and they were talking about it during oral arguments that they don't like the idea of a president about any law saying, well, just disregard it.
Right. However, based on what's happened recently, Donald Trump could have given a couple of justices a call and said, hey, do me a solid. Hold on this. Give us a stay. Give us something. I know he did that with regards to his sentencing. It didn't work out, but Donald Trump isn't above that. And a lot of these Supreme Court justices are obliged to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I was actually talking to TJ earlier tonight, um, and said he wouldn't be surprised if he mentioned Gorsuch and Thomas. if, because Donald Trump's, like you said, he's got the one buddy who's a big investor. If
Right.
they would give a couple of them a little bit of a taste, and there you go.
Yeah.
Because Clarence Thomas will rule in anybody's favor if he's getting a taste.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and he's probably going to retire now. And so Donald Trump can put some 14-year-old that will be in there for the rest of time. Uh, and it would be a nice little parting gift to get a percentage of TikTok or something. Who
Well, yeah.
knows?
However, you talk about Thomas retiring. I saw something right after the election that it was talking about a couple of the justices. I know, it's either Kagan or Sotomayor has health issues.
I
Um,
think it's Sotomayor. Oh, no, maybe it's
Sotomayor.
Kagan. I know.
It's one of the two. I know they have one of them has health issues. They were wanting her to resign so Biden could fill the seat.
Right.
Um, but they were also in the same article talking about Alito and Thomas. And at least as of that article, both of them were saying they weren't going anywhere. They had no plans to retire under Donald Trump.
Wow. Well, I suppose they're worried that Donald Trump will put somebody even worse than they are in there. Maybe they have some integrity about the Supreme Court. Doubt it. You know, it's about the grift for them. You know, one of the lawyers for TikTok made an excellent point. If you're going to shut down TikTok, why then wouldn't you shut down Temu or Shine or something like that? One of those places that sell shit. I mean, basically, what's when you're on TikTok and you have the TikTok shop, that's all just coming from Temu. That's where it's coming from. And Temu is a Chinese company, and the same kind of data is collected by Temu and Shine, I think it's called, and they get the same thing. So why wouldn't you shut down them too? I think that's a good point. And another good point is that we have concerns of TikTok stealing data and messing with elections and that sort of thing. But we have factual evidence that Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter do. So we've got a rumor of TikTok doing it, but we've got actual evidence of Facebook, but nobody's looking into them.
Well, yeah, that's a problem. Especially Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Those need to be really looked at, but they won't for 4 more years, or at least two until Democrats retake control in Congress in the midterms. I have no doubt about that. But with the TikTok thing and the evidence and the supposed evidence about them, that was something that did get brought up, and I think it was John Roberts, but I could be wrong as to which justice it was. Mentioned as like they took offense to the this idea that all of the supposed evidence against TikTok was all filed under seal, and the TikTok attorneys were not allowed to be read in and they couldn't see any of that evidence
Right.
to even form a defense on it. And they're like, that's some shady shit. That's not how court proceedings work. There's procedure for reading in counsel and letting them be able to see your evidence under seal or not.
Well, and what people need to know too is we know the government is concerned about TikTok with connection to China and data and all that sort of stuff. But do you know who the biggest lobbyist of all time against TikTok was? Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg poured tons of money into lobbying the Congress to get TikTok shut down. Do you think he cares about data? No, because he's fucking stealing it too. He cares about the competition. What he wants to do is force them into selling so he can buy it and turn it into another shithole like Facebook and Instagram.
I believe that. Um, and if that happens to be the way it goes, I don't think it will. ByteDance has said as much that they're not going to sell. They refuse to sell, and that they can't sell it without, if they don't have the algorithm, you can sell the app. If they don't get the algorithm, it's worthless. It don't
Well,
mean
that's the
shit.
point. Well, and that's the interesting thing. The guy from Shark Tank, I forgot his name, Mr. Wonderful, him and a bunch of other people have offered to buy TikTok and they offered to buy it without the algorithm. Well, what's the fucking point? If you don't have the algorithm, you don't have TikTok. So sure, sell them the shell and keep the algorithm. That take $100 billion from them fuckers and sell them a shell of TikTok. That's crazy. That's stupid.
Oh, it's very dumb. And what the concern was from what I got from reading about the oral arguments from the Solicitor General that was arguing on the government side was that the algorithm can be fucked with basically, and that China could say instead of putting your video out there, they could put somebody spouting pro-Chinese stuff out, and while you think it's just organic, that you're seeing this video now based on your preferences. It's like there's a block button for a reason, and I didn't hear that mentioned, but I also didn't read the entire transcript, so maybe it was. But if something like that came across my feed, I just block it. If it's too far out there, I block them or whatever. And that's even for stuff that's supposedly patriotic. Hell, we block all the Trump-a-fucks, and they're
Yeah,
supposed to be
yeah.
raging American patriots.
And here's the thing, if some other country started putting on promotional material for their countries and how they're better for America, better than America, I'd have to say, well, you got a point. The way it's going here in this country, Donald Trump being president, yeah, Iceland looks fucking better.
Yeah. Um, you know, it's all ridiculous. It's made by people who like the law itself. This goes back to something we've talked about a lot. We got old fuckers in Congress who don't know shit about shit when it comes to technology, and they don't understand half of what they're being told, even in these hearings, about how
Yeah.
any of it works. It's all just words and nonsense to them.
No, nor do they have any interest in learning it. I mean, that goes back to almost every bill that goes through there. They're 1,500 pages. Nobody reads the bill. They just hear from somebody else what they should do in the vote. Nobody knows anything. And when you're going to the Supreme Court, some of the questions they ask would suggest they don't know even what fucking TikTok or an app is. I mean, they're so out of touch. They're from another generation. They have no fucking clue.
Well, yeah, I remember during one of the hearings on TikTok, I don't remember what rep it was. I think it was a Republican, but I could be wrong, but it was an old guy. And he's like, so if I have TikTok on my phone and I connect to my home Wi-Fi, does TikTok have access to my Wi-Fi? And
Yeah, but no.
I think I know what he meant. I think he meant could TikTok by being access to your router or your Wi-Fi router, could it access your home network and you know connect to any of the other devices on that network? I think that's what he meant. But by the way he phrased it, he sounded like one of those old guys who has no idea what even like Facebook is or YouTube is or whatever, and calls it the wrong thing all the time.
Yeah.
You know the people
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, I
That's what he
do.
sounded like. And then there was the other guy in there. I think it was also in the TikTok hearings. Might have been something around the same time. They were talking to somebody who was from Singapore. Well, you're Chinese, right? No, I'm Singaporean. But you're from China. No, I'm from Singapore. So are you loyal to the Communist Party of China? No, I'm from Singapore.
Yeah. They want them to say it very badly that they're tied to China. And these dumb fucks that are supposed to be leading us and serving us have no clue about geography. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, I could see Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert being a fucking idiot, but the average Joe in Congress not knowing any better or not preparing before questioning? What the fuck?
Well, yeah, like I said, some of it has to do with these are old fucks. Some of it's very clearly it was that one to me seemed more racist than anything about not knowing the
Yeah.
geography. And they, of course, they were wanting to try to get some sort of a gotcha to
Yeah.
tie it to China. Um, but it's ridiculous. We got these people in Congress who have been there forever and a day, don't know shit about shit, and they're the ones making the bills, they're the ones making the laws. And for some of them, and I'll go back to it because I say it all the time, like my senator, Chuck Grassley, 90 fucking one. What the hell business does a 91-year-old have being in Congress at this point?
Yeah.
Any bill he passes, he's not going to see the benefit of for the most part, unless it's one that gives himself a raise. And even then, he might not live that long.
Well, Chuck Grassley, when he was young, radio was just coming in, for fuck's sake. What does he know about the internet?
Well, yeah, like he was born in, I think it was 33. Yeah,
Yeah.
33. Um, he would have turned 18 in 51 at the beginning of the Korean War.
Yeah.
I mean, let that sink in. He was 18 at the beginning of the Korean War.
Yeah.
That's insane. And he's sitting in Congress and he is third in line for the presidency.
That's frightening. I mean, the options aren't great. If not Donald Trump, then JD Vance. If not JD Vance, then Mike Johnson. If not Mike Johnson, then it's fucking Chuck Grassley. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And then
You can't
after
win
Donald
for
Trump is
losing.
sworn in, if all four of them for whatever reason can't do it, it'd be fucking Marco Rubio. Because after Senate pro tem or President pro tem of the Senate, it's Secretary of State, and
Wow.
that'd be Marco
I
Rubio.
didn't realize that. I didn't realize that. That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
fucking
No,
crazy.
it'd take like a calamity for all four of them to be knocked out by whatever, happened. But
I think it'd
Jesus
be a nice
Christ.
stroke of luck. It'd be a nice stroke of luck if we could take all of them out.
Yeah, but
Fuck.
the options down the line, then it starts going down the line after Rubio. I don't know the exact order. It goes down all the cabinet positions. And Donald Trump hasn't put forward a good one for any of them.
Yeah, in terms of that, we're fucked. But
Yeah.
you know, the news came out yesterday that Jack Smith resigned, and I know a lot of people were people don't understand how this goes, so a lot of people were shook up. Oh, he resigned. Oh my God, it's over. Well, a lot of it's over, but it isn't surprising that he resigned. Explain to folks why that isn't surprising.
Well, we heard right after the election, he basically said he planned to resign before the end of the Biden administration. Donald Trump would have come in, first thing he would have told whoever was running the DOJ would have been to fire Jack Smith.
Right.
He would have gotten fired anyway.
Right.
So Jack Smith resigning on his own terms and being able to say, "Yeah, I quit," of course, for personal reasons, is much better than getting let go by Donald Trump.
Well,
But
he
the cases
completed the
were
job.
already over. Yeah,
He
the
compl-
cases were already over.
right.
Um,
Once he turned in those reports, he was done. There's
yeah.
nothing more for him to do.
Now, in theory, those cases could come back after Donald Trump is out of office and we get a Democratic president again. But Donald Trump probably won't be in any condition if he's still alive at 82 years old to stand trial.
Or he'll
But
commit some other crimes
oh
that'll take
yeah,
precedence over
probably.
this one.
Oh, probably. Um, but it's not surprising that Jack Smith resigned. Now he's got these two reports coming out. Sounds like one of them is going to come out. One of them is going to stay hidden. Uh, and the way I understand it is sometime Monday, if they don't do anything, the DC report is going to come out.
Right. And I'm ready for that. I mean, a lot of people are waiting for the classified documents thing. And frankly, if it doesn't come out before January 20th, we'll never see it unless
No,
it
we won't
shows
see
up
it.
sometime after he's out of office. But
We
the January 6th will be interesting. It's going to be interesting because there's a lot of people that were in his inner circle that testified against him, namely Mark Meadows. There's going to be a lot of information released when that comes out, and it's going to be horribly embarrassing for Donald Trump. It's not going to put him in jail or anything, but people have to remember embarrassing Donald Trump is the ultimate shot against Donald Trump. He's a narcissist. He does not like to be embarrassed, like getting convicted. He does not like that, and it fucks with his head. And that's a small consolation prize. At this point, I'll fucking take it.
well, yeah. And I was reading something about the that report, and I think somebody had asked Donald. I don't know if they asked Donald Trump about it or what, because the wording in the article was a little weird, but they're expecting it to be over 500 pages
Yeah.
of evidence and documents and testimony and stuff. And I'm surprised it's that small. I figured it'd be bigger. Um, but there's going to be a lot to it. Donald Trump's going to be embarrassed as shit when this comes out. Obviously, he's going to say or do something crazy, probably Monday. Um, maybe Monday he'll say something about, well, maybe we need to go liberate Great Britain, or maybe we need to go take Brazil. I don't know, whatever dumb shit he comes up with, but just to distract us from this report coming out, because he's not going to want to deal with the fallout of any of it.
No, he doesn't follow up with anything. He's going to be upset about this report being released. He was upset by the fact that he was going to get sentenced, even though he knew that he wasn't going to get any punishment. A lot of people say that Judge Juan Marchand was weak because of that. He had no choice. He stated very clearly that the reason he did that is for the sake of the office of the presidency, had nothing to do with the occupant of the office of the presidency. It's just the only thing he could do. But as I've said before, just by virtue of Donald Trump losing that opportunity to slip out of it, is fucking with his head. And if you've noticed, there's been a lot of things that Donald Trump has been trying, from, making Rick Scott the majority leader of the Senate, to Matt Gaetz, to taking off the debt ceiling. He keeps losing a lot. He's not winning, and it's the Republicans that are shutting him down.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is he keeps losing, and it's going to keep happening.
It's going to get worse, I think, when he's president.
Oh yeah. Now I was starting to read an article right before we got on here. And after we get done, I'll go back and I'll probably finish it and do a TikTok for Sunday on it. Something about Byron Donalds was told Donald Trump at a uh, meeting at Mar-a-Lago where they had a bunch of people there, including Chip Roy and a few other major Republicans. Um, and they were talking about Donald Trump's plan to make Canada the 51st state. And they're like, wait a minute. They'd get two senators. We're already barely in the majority. And they'd probably vote Democratic. And
Right.
they'd get a bunch of representatives. They'd probably vote Democratic. We don't want that. Maybe make them a territory instead.
Well, and the thing about it is they're arguing about whether it's democratic or not, but the whole fucking thing is stupid. It's not going to happen. It's just not.
No.
Why are we even arguing about this? But the thing about it is, the interesting thing in that article, they were talking about how Byron Donald walked up to him and to his face called him out on this. Uh, apparently, uh, uh, apparently Byron Donald has a bit of a hard on for Donald Trump. No pun intended, but, but, but think about it. It's funny. You'll get it later.
Oh,
Anyway,
I got it already. Oh.
I know. I'm talking about the audience. You probably just woke up and shit. Anyway, but apparently Donald Trump was looking at choosing Byron Donald as the VP. And the Republicans said, no, we're not going to do that. Can't you see he's black? And he doesn't have a girlfriend. How can he be the vice president? So Donald Trump thought he might be a good choice for VP, and they told him no. So Donald Trump cut him loose and then went with the tech bros buddy, JD Vance.
If that story's true and he wanted Byron Donalds as his VP pick, I that would have probably been the better choice.
Yeah,
That would have helped with his image of being a racist and being against, because the rumor, of course, is that Byron Donalds was a member of the LGBTQ community. At least that
right.
was the rumor. Didn't he get married though?
Well, he claimed to have a girlfriend, and then he brought the girlfriend into some event, and then he announced he's getting married. He probably figured that old soul's not convinced that he's straight. just not convinced. You ask her, and she goes, "Oh no, not him." Anyway, but I think if he figured that if he's going to make any hay or make any progress in the Republican Party, he better come up with a beard. And if that's what he did, nobody knows whether he's part of the LGBTQ community, but it's not that, when you got the Lindsey Grahams and stuff, people voting against LGBTQ folks who happen to be in that same group, that's not unusual in the Republican Party. But can you imagine Byron Donald if he had acknowledged that he was in an LGBTQ part of the community, plus he's black? Why even be in the Republican Party, for fuck's sake?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, they don't realize that they're part of a group that actively hates them. They think because they're with them that they're one of the good ones, right? That they're one of the accepted ones. But my point was kind of where I was going with that was he's a member of the LGBT community. He's black. That would have helped Donald Trump's image far better than picking JD Vance.
Oh,
Far better.
absolutely.
It,
Absolutely.
and I can't believe I'm saying Donald Trump almost made a good choice on his own.
Well, and I'm
He,
sure Donald Choice was thinking, I got to make these people not believe I'm racist, even though I am racist. This would make them believe I'm not racist. See, I got a VP who's black. But the Republican Party as a whole, again, another loss for Donald Trump, if that's a true story. Donald Trump didn't get to call that shot. Somebody else called the shot, presumably Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. That's why J.D. Vance, a guy with less than 2 years as senator, is now running for the VP of the United States of America. It's fucking amazing.
well, I'm going to say this in JD Vance's defense, being a senator for only 2 years isn't the worst thing about JD Vance. Um,
No,
and
no.
because wasn't Barack Obama only a senator for 2 years and he won the presidency?
And he was black.
Yeah, but
Crazy.
I mean, just being a senator for 2 years, like that's you can't use it as a knock against JD Vance and then say, well, but look what Obama did. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm
Well,
playing devil's
there's a
advocate
difference.
here.
No, I get you. I get you. There's a difference, though. J.D. Vance wrote a novel and a TV program or a TV movie, and at least Barack Obama was involved in organizing and involved in politics to a certain extent, and he's had some education and he's a
Wasn't
serious candidate. JD's not serious.
wasn't he in the Illinois state legislature
I think he
before running
was.
for?
Yeah,
I think
I
he
think he
was
was.
because what didn't wasn't it Blagojevich or whatever his name was, the governor of Illinois at the time? Didn't he get in trouble for trying to sell that seat? Or
Yeah,
was that the Senate seat that Barack gave up to become president?
I think it was the Senate seat because Blagojevich was the governor and he would have appointed somebody else. That would have been his job to appoint the Senate seat. Blagojevich, by the way, went to jail for a time until I think he was pardoned by Donald Trump. But yeah, that was the whole mess there. Chicago and Illinois politics can be a little sketchy now and again. But yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, I seem to remember that just as we were talking about. I was like, there was something about him getting his seat sold. Yeah, go figure. People being shady in politics.
Bringing up Barack Obama, Barack's getting a little heat these days. People love Barack Obama, but it doesn't take long for people to turn on you when Donald Trump is involved. We know we had
Mhm.
Jimmy Carter's funeral, and we had a lot of people snubbing Donald Trump. Nobody was talking to Donald Trump. But Barack Obama, sans Michelle Obama, she did not show up, sat next to Donald Trump, and they seemed to be having a pretty jovial conversation. They kind of laughed, and nobody knows really what was said. But people just did not like the fact that Barack Obama was talking friendly with Donald Trump. And it is a little weird when you think about it after the birther thing and all the other claims each other had against the other. How are they sitting down there and being buddy buddy when George W. Bush wouldn't even look at him?
I think because he had to sit next to him for the entire funeral, I think Barack was making the best of a bad situation.
Probably. And,
Trying
but
just,
I
he'll be, he said, I'll be nice. I'll crack a couple jokes, put him at ease, make him think I'm buddy with him just for the duration of this. I'll get through this and we won't upstage the funeral and move on.
yeah. Well, yeah, and that's probably really what happened was that you know, Barack didn't want to become the show at Jimmy Carter's funeral and just did what he needed to do, just played politics.
Mhm.
But people are at a point now where it's so divisive and so adversarial that even if Barack Obama plays nice with Donald Trump, people are pissed.
Well, yeah, and Donald Trump has brought that on himself by making everything about Trump, by making everything divisive. Everything's in a. If it's not his way, oh, it's this, it's that, it's the other, and adding in the names and just being. He creates that atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I'm trying to look at it from more of a bigger picture and give Barack Obama the benefit of the doubt that it was just trying to do whatever he had to get through it, be respectful, not of Donald Trump or even the fact that he had been president, but more of Jimmy Carter and not trying to, steal the show there.
And I think part of it too is when you look at Barack Obama, who was president some time back, Joe Biden, or some of these older people in Congress, they're playing by political rules from bygone days. We're in a different world now. It is adversarial, it is in your face and fighting. And that's not for the better, I don't think. But the problem we have with Joe Biden and some of the things, he could have been more aggressive with Donald Trump. He could have been more aggressive with Merrick Garland. And he didn't because it wasn't polite in company, political company. But that politeness and rules and norms, they don't exist anymore with the appearance of Donald Trump. And so going forward, we have to find some people that are more current and understand the rules of engagement in this particular time frame.
I think a little bit, but I also think once Donald Trump is out of power and once MAGA has failed, because they're going to fail.
Yeah.
They're talking tariffs, they're talking national income tax, or not income tax, national sales tax and doing away with income tax, all this stupid shit. If they fail as bad as they could and completely wreck the economy, I mean, MAGA movement's done with Trump one way or the other, but if they fail that bad, anybody associated with them is going to get voted out. Um, I think it'll go back at least in part to being more of a civilized politics like it used to be. A lot of it is
Hopefully.
all caused by MAGA and Donald Trump. And once they're out, it'll probably go back, at least somewhat to that civilized time.
Well, I think once Donald Trump is out of the mix, people will naturally play by those rules because that's what normal people are about. The only negative thing about it is those people who've sidled up to Donald Trump all these years, how are they going to be considered legitimate by trying to go back and play by the regular rules? I think they've tainted themselves for evermore.
Well, the problem is with that, I would agree with you for people like you and me and a lot of the listeners who are really invested in politics, that would be true.
Hmm.
For the general population, they have about a 6, maybe 9 month memory span at best.
Right.
So
I
if
I agree.
when Donald Trump is out of the mix and these people go back to playing nicey nice politics, unless people like us are being in their face about it and showing clips and doing all of this and talking about, well, this person was like this while Donald Trump was in the mix, and now they're backing back off and calling him out and taking him to task. A lot of people are going to forget because that's how we ended up with Donald Trump part two. They
Right.
forgot what it was like 4 years ago.
I would say this about the general public that you could take the most staunch supporter of Donald Trump, say Mike Johnson. If Mike Johnson had enough and had gone too far. And then Mike Johnson started speaking out against Donald Trump. Within 3 months, he'd be the Democrats' favorite Republican, a la Liz Cheney. The first person who starts talking out against Donald Trump, they're going to say, well, he's a good guy. He's standing up for it, even though he didn't do it for the last 8 years. You're right. The culture in this country is if you talk well about Donald Trump, you can get canceled. But if you speak badly of him, they don't care who you are. You're their friend now.
Yeah, that's part of it. And they are, at least I think some of the people on the left, to an extent, are willing to forgive anybody on the right if they turn against Donald Trump. However, I also think, though, even though a lot of the Democrats were like, look at Liz Cheney, she's one of the good ones. The minute she started campaigning with Kamala Harris, especially in the final couple of weeks where it was almost every event, I think that
Yeah,
hurt Kamala. They're like, oh no, this is a
absolutely.
bridge too far. She's going too far right. Um, so they're willing to be like, oh yeah, they're one of the good Republicans, and they'll give them a little bit of some leeway there, but they're not willing to welcome them with open arms into the Democratic Party unless they are fully switching parties. And even then, I think they'll keep them at arm's length.
Yeah, I do too. We have a problem in this country that the vast majority of people in this country aren't well informed. They don't understand how the games are being played. They don't understand how they're being played. And make no mistake, the people of this country are being played every fucking day by Republicans and Democrats. We
Oh
have
yeah.
our own problems with Democrats, the way things went with the election. There's a lot of repairs that need to be done with the Democratic Party.
Oh, I would agree. And one of the things we need to do, we were talking about it just a little bit ago. We got too many damn old people calling the shots in the
Absolutely.
Democratic Party too. It's both sides of the aisle that have a problem with older politicians who have been playing the game of politics for far too damn long.
Right.
Um, and I think some of them are in leadership positions and are calling and making bad choices, like calling for Joe Biden to step out of the race. I still think Joe Biden probably would have beat Donald Trump. Assuming Donald Trump would have been still on the same trajectory, if nothing changed for him, the way his rallies were for attendance and the way everything looked, the way he looked at the very end of that campaign, I think Joe Biden beat him because people would have forgotten that bad debate performance.
Oh, and if people think this debate performance was disqualifying, then that would have been the case for Donald Trump when he had his horrible debate performance with Kamala Harris. But obviously, it didn't affect anything.
Yeah, it didn't mean shit about shit, but we had people in Democratic leadership that freaked out about it. Oh my God, he looks so horrible. He looks so horrible. We got to make a change. We got to make a change now. And they forced it for 3 weeks. It was every day. That's all we heard in the media was, is Joe Biden dropping out? This Democrat says Joe Biden should drop out. This prominent Democrat says Joe Biden should drop out. And that hurt Joe Biden. That hurt Kamala Harris. And it set up potentially the win for Donald Trump. And these people, they make these snap decisions and they react, but they wait until they have to react. They don't look ahead.
Yeah,
They weren't, thinking about, okay, well, could he recover from this? No, we got to make a switch. We got to do something right now. And when you're doing that reactionary stuff, that's when you fuck up. That's why Donald Trump fucks up so much. He doesn't think ahead. He's not planning.
yeah,
There's no strategy to anything. He's just reacting in the moment. And then he says something completely unhinged or stupid or something he couldn't possibly ever accomplish.
absolutely. Well, in that situation with Joe Biden stepping aside, what happened was the Democrats panicked and the media saw it as a huge story and money in their pocket. And that's why it happened the way it happened. I wanted to talk about what we heard yesterday from Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is known for his bravado, his bullshit, his bluster. but he says he's fixing to sign 100 or more executive orders on his first day. And I'm wondering, how do you do that when you get up at 11 and play 2 rounds of golf? It sounds like he's trying to tell us he's a really hard worker, but we know this motherfucker's not a hard worker.
Well, those executive orders will have already been done up by somebody else. They just
True.
need all. He only has to sit there long enough to scribble his name and Sharpie on them and call it, call that work. He's not handwriting all of the order. Um, but I did a TikTok about those 100 executive orders, and I've got a theory that it's going to be a lot of what we saw out of the beginning of the Biden administration. A lot of these executive orders are going to be reversals of Biden executive orders.
Yeah.
It's going to be things that, well, Joe Biden reversed this Donald Trump executive order, so Donald Trump is going to go back and reverse the reversal and put it back to how he had it. And because a lot of them are going to be directing this agency to do this, that agency to do that. And it's not going to amount to a whole lot of anything. The rest are
No,
probably going
true.
to be the stuff that he can't do by executive order for one reason or another, either like ending birthright citizenship. You can't do that by executive order.
He seems
He
to think
might,
he can.
he thinks he can do a lot of things. Um, but he'll sign the executive order. There'll be an immediate lawsuit on it, and a judge is going to laugh him out of court. And some of these will be tied up in court longer than he's going to be in office. And the rest are going to be
He,
things that he couldn't do for any number of other reasons.
I mean, does he realize that he can't overturn an amendment with an executive order? I mean,
No,
that's a pretty lengthy process if that's what he hopes to do.
he does not. He does not have a clue as to how any of that works. I guarantee it. He thinks
Yeah.
that an executive order is like a royal proclamation, and they need to bend down and kiss the ring because his royal largeness said so.
Yeah, it's pretty pretty fucking ridiculous. You know, it's funny. I haven't seen the list of 100. He probably doesn't have a list of 100. But in the things I saw that are supposed to be coming, tariffs, deportations, all that important shit that's not going to happen. Not once did I see any listing about lowering the price of eggs, the price of groceries, or even working on inflation. That must be on the second 200 for the 21st.
Yeah, more like the second 3,000 or however many he's going to write, that he'll get to sign, sometime about 2029 when he's out of office.
Yeah, I still don't think that he's going to be there that long. Either
No.
he won't physically be able to hack it, or the Republicans will find one way or another to get him the fuck out of there. I mean, I think we're seeing already that they're pushing back against him, and he's not even president. I just personally think that Donald Trump thinks it's going to be like 2017, but he's going to be even stronger. And what he's going to find is he's going to be a lot weaker. People are going to be less interested in working with him, especially when he's talking about crazy shit. And they're just going to push back because he has nothing for them anymore. He can't run again for reelection. He can only embarrass the Republicans. I have a feeling this is going to be a rough go for Donald Trump, at least in the first 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'll be a rough go the second 2 years because Democrats will probably retake both houses. Um, but he thinks he's got all these friends and they're going to bow down and kiss the ring. And they're not going to. They're going to be having to push back. I've said it a lot. They need to get reelected. Congress has elections to run. We're already seeing challengers coming up for some of these open seats. I think I mentioned it in one of the lives. I think it was the live I did with you Monday. There's already an ad running for a primary challenger from the Republican Party to primary out Joni Ernst, the other senator from Iowa that gets forgotten about because of Chuck Grassley being,
Yeah.
ancient and ridiculous and everything else. But the Republicans are already putting primary challengers out. She's looking at that already. I guarantee you going, okay, I got to be careful. We got primaries out there we got to run. We got midterms coming up. They're thinking about it now already.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what people have to understand is as much as the election for 2024 just ended, don't think they aren't looking at 2028, both the Republicans and the Democrats. I read an article that they're looking for different people that might be a potential candidate. And it wasn't Gavin Newsom. It was some of these no-name people, somebody from Minnesota even that I've never even heard of. And I think that's likely that we will see somebody come out of nowhere and then be promoted and showcased and handled how Kamala Harris should have been handled and wasn't. But I mean, you think about it, Barack Obama came out of fucking nowhere. So it wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprising if somebody we don't even know yet is going to be the candidate.
Oh yeah. I mean, we can guess at any point as to who it could be. But like you said, Obama came out of nowhere. Bill Clinton, realistically, Bill Clinton, I think you and Ed were talking about it. Um, Bill Clinton only ran because they thought for sure uh, they were going to lose to George H.W. Bush until the economy took a shit. The economy took
Exactly.
a shit on George H.W. Bush, and Clinton walks into he kind of pulled a Donald Trump, stumbled ass first into the presidency. Not quite as bad as Trump, but the Democrats were expecting to lose to Bush.
Yeah, absolutely. Bush, prior to the economy tanking, had one of the highest approval ratings of any president in history. And at that point, the Democrats, any important likely Democrats said, I'm not going to go in and get my ass whipped and screw up my next chance to run for president. So it was left to a no name. Who was Bill Clinton at the time? I mean, the fucking governor of Arkansas. I think his salary was similar to somebody, you know, as a assistant manager at fucking 7-Eleven. It wasn't a real big job. I mean, it's Arkansas for Christ's sake, but he got in there. Obama got in there, relatively unknown. And I wouldn't be, and I think they almost have to do that in the Democratic Party. They've played these cards too many times and they aren't working for them. So they got to come up with something new. At least that sounds promising to me.
I mean, it does sound promising. The big thing that would help them, though, it depends it kind of depends who's emerging for the Republicans, because Donald Trump has sucked all the oxygen out of the room for all the reasonable Republicans. So, depending who runs, none of them are going to have the same bluster as a Trump, the
No,
same
nobody even
bravado,
close.
the same bully tactics. None of it. So somebody who's not as big of a name, there wouldn't be might be good because they wouldn't have all of the negative years and years worth of um, stacked up insults and problems. That was one of the problems with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton had years of being being the Republicans' boogeyman, where they could keep going after scandal after scandal after scandal and dig this and that up and constantly feed a narrative where an unknown would have been that just wouldn't have been sitting there for as free real estate basically.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, I don't think the Republicans can raise anybody up as a prospect until Donald Trump is gone. Donald Trump's not going to tolerate somebody else becoming a rising star while he's still in the mix. Like you say, he sucks up all the oxygen. And if somebody comes up that seems to be a rising star, he's going to want to fucking put that fucking out quickly because that's just who he is.
Oh yeah, like you're not going to see anything out of JD Vance, even if JD Vance ends up being the candidate, and he may end up being the candidate even if Donald Trump lives all the way through his term. But whoever runs is going to have to be very limited in their campaigning. Um, they're not going to be able to do the big raucous rallies that Trump does. It's going to be more muted because Donald Trump is going to be boisterous and loud, and he could sink the Republicans' candidate in 28 with whatever he says about them. if he, because he'll turn on them if he thinks they're getting more attention than he deserves.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a problem for the Republican Party. And hopefully they understand that because they're in a tight situation. As long as Donald Trump is hanging off their back, they can't really do much because he's going to suck it all up. And that's why, you and I have talked about it. As soon as he becomes president, the Republicans will be looking for a way to get rid of him because he's nothing but a fucking albatross around somebody's neck.
I just had this thought as you were just talking there. Um, Even if they get rid of him, and they may have to save their own elections and to run, and hope to keep their own seats because of how bad he may fuck everything up. But as long as Donald Trump is around, doesn't matter if they booted him from the White House. His base, his hardcore base, will not care that Donald Trump was ejected from the White House by the Republicans. They won't care that he was impeached and removed by Republicans if they choose to do it. But if they do, and he turns against all of them,
And
as
he
long as
will.
and he will, of course, but as long as he's around, alive, he's going to sink any Republican. Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter why. And whatever they do, even if they kicked him out of office, there's going to be a segment of this population that are Republican voters that will go with whatever Donald Trump says and will go against whoever that person is the Republicans put up.
Absolutely. And that's why I said it in the live, I'll say it again, and I'm not wishing death on anybody. Yeah, maybe, but here's the deal. Because of that situation, the 25th Amendment, impeachment, the 14th Amendment, anything the Republicans want to do to get rid of Donald Trump is going to divide even further the Republican Party. The only way the Republicans can kind of hold on to hope is if something happens to Donald Trump and he passes away, because then the Republicans aren't responsible for booting him out. They can make him a martyr. They can do whatever the fuck they want. But that is the only way they can kind of try to keep the Republican Party together. And even still, there's such a division. I don't know that they'll ever be able to pull people together to agree on anything.
Yeah, except like you said, if he dies, that might be their only chance of gluing everything sort of together. Um, if they have to boot him, the Republican Party will be fractured for probably a decade or better.
Right. Well, and JD Vance has a problem too. He'd be the natural candidate in 2028, being the vice president. But if Donald Trump turns this place into a shitstorm and the economy goes bad and everything's fucked up and they're embarrassed, JD Vance is going to be attached to that. He's not going to be a viable candidate if Donald Trump fucks everything up. And Donald Trump doesn't care because he doesn't have to get reelected.
Yeah, that's half the problem. He's going to have the problem Kamala Harris had in this election, and that is he's going to be tied to everything Donald Trump has done by virtue of being part of the administration.
Absolutely.
Um, but beyond that, if he's part of any sort of movement to remove Trump, he's dead in the water. He'll never get
Mhm.
elected. They'll hate him worse than they hate Pence.
Right.
Um, but he may have in I don't know what his thoughts are. They may have to convince him to run, even with all of that hanging over his head, as the sacrificial lamb,
Yeah.
because nobody else may want to run for the Republican Party. You know, if the economy's a shit show, kind of like what we were just talking about a few minutes ago about Bill Clinton going up against George H.W. Bush.
Right. Exactly. There may be nobody that wants to put their reputation or their future at risk by running on a ticket that just cannot win because they created such a disaster in uh, in in this country. And to be honest with you, it's not going to take much for people to get the perception that there's a disaster, because in spite of what everybody says, things are going pretty well now, at least in the upper levels of the economy. The lower levels, the millennials, Gen Zs, they need help. Donald Trump's certainly not going to give them that. Um, But if the economy, the stock market, the unemployment, the GDP, if that all goes to shit, um, there's just going to be nobody in the Republican Party that's going to be electable unless they can prove there's some massive change in the party. And we've seen on both sides that's just not possible. You can't change up in the middle of the fucking stream.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like what I've been saying numerous times since Donald Trump won is if he fucks the economy as bad as he could, and we're talking, it has the potential to be as bad as 1929 in the stock market crash.
Yeah,
It could lead to Democrats being in power for almost 20 years.
yeah.
It took the Republicans almost 20 years to recover from the damage Herbert Hoover did to the economy by not handling the depression, the stock market
Well,
crash in the beginning of the depression.
yeah. Well, let's be honest. If Kamala would have won in November 5th, we could have been in that same situation where Republicans would never have been elected for 20 years too, based on Donald Trump's behavior, his candidacy and how it was so tainted. But you and I and a lot of people were both wrong. Apparently, none of that matters to the general public. We can talk about politicians and who's bad and who's causing problems. But we've got two other areas that we have to address, and I don't know if we can even do that. First of all, um, issues in this country. People want to think Republicans or Donald Trump is the enemy. They're not the enemy. They are the pawns of the enemy. People always say, what can we do? What can we do? Well, once we identify who the enemy is, there's only a couple things we can do. And what I'm getting at is what most people understand is the true enemy, the true villain in this are the wealthy people, the oligarchs, the corporations. And if people want an example of this, let's take Donald Trump winning the election on November 5th. Worst possible candidate in history. Kamala's got all the money. Kamala's got all the enthusiasm. Yet Donald Trump wins. Why? Well, some people will say because a bunch of dumb fucks voted for him, but it's more than that. It's Elon Musk, it's Jeff Bezos, it's corporations, it's oligarchs, it's lobbyists pouring money into a dead horse, so much money that he won. And then you take a look at healthcare. Why is it that we spend more on healthcare and pharmaceuticals more than any country anywhere? And we're supposed to be the strongest country. Well, it's very simple because these wealthy people, the insurance and the pharmaceutical lobbies, pour money into our Congress members to make sure we don't get universal health care. So we continue to pay these egregious prices. Once again, it is the wealthy who is the villain. And it just goes on and on. Almost everything that's happening in this country that's bad can be tracked back to oligarchs or wealthy people. And once we know that, as I've said before, people ask, what can we do? There's only one thing we can do is make them pay. Make them pay like MSNBC and leaving in droves, Twitter leaving in droves. Don't buy Teslas, you know, don't use Amazon. Don't participate in any of these things. Mark Zuckerberg, don't get rid of Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Fuck them. Just fuck them. Now, whether people will do that or not, that's another story. But if you want to know what we can do to change things, that's it.
Yeah, you're right. Hitting them in the pocketbook is a big one. Um, and we need to do more of that. I know there are several companies that, like Walmart. Oh, I do have a couple grocery store options here in my town. Uh, but then there's also Walmart. Very limited in what I buy where. Um, I buy what I have to from Walmart only because it's cheaper if for certain things, or it's the only place in town where you can get it. But if I can go somewhere else, I do.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're talking about the 100 executive orders or more than 100 executive orders. Two of the main things he wants to do is the mass deportation. And I hear Tom Horman already kind of walking it back. Well, we can't do this and we can't do that. It's going to cost billions of dollars. And the logistics of deporting 20 million people, it's just not there. It's one thing to be able to say that and spew that shit, but they're not going to do that. How do you think that? I know you've said before how you think this is going to play out, and I tend to agree with you, but why don't you reiterate that for the folks listening?
Well, I kind of got the idea from TJ. Uh, but what I think they're going to do is it's going to be a token effort. TJ was saying like they'll kick out 20, 30,000 people, call it millions. They'll get the images they want for the news and the video of certain people going, and then they'll play up the numbers like Donald Trump always does. That was kind of what TJ started with. And then I was watching something by another creator, and what they were saying, and this guy's an immigration guy, and he said there's I don't know how many people, but there's a lot of people who have been caught. They've already gone through the whole process. They've been given final orders of deportation. They have no more appeals left. They're just waiting on basically ICE to show up at their door and put them on a plane or a bus or whatever and send them out. They've been waiting for who knows how long. And I think Donald Trump, they're going to get those people that are already at that final stage that are just waiting to be sent out of the country. And they're going to do that. They're going to get those people out and call it some big massive win.
Yeah,
Maybe try
that's
to
how he
deport
does it.
some of the ones that are already in prison for minor offenses, and then sign a couple of bullshit executive orders and hope nobody pays attention when they get tossed out in court.
Yeah, I think so too. What do you make of what happened in California with that ICE raid? It seemed kind of odd, the timing of it and the fact that Joe Biden's still in office. They went into a California town. I want to say Fresno. It isn't Fresno, but they arrested a bunch of people, and I'm not sure what they've done with them at this point. Uh,
Okay. I hadn't
I'm
heard
not
about
just
that.
pulling this. I'm not just pulling that out of my ass. Let me just see if I can pull it up.
I believe
Um,
you. I hadn't heard that one.
yeah, I just thought it was kind of weird. So there's this is a Newsweek. North Carolina, New Carolina, California immigrant raids are sowing chaos. Immigration raids by the United States Border Patrol in Kern County, California, are sowing chaos in vulnerable communities according to California Senate Majority Leader Lena Gonzalez. She was responding to a series of raids in Bakersfield area this week, reported by ABC. So that's where it was. It was in Bakersfield, and it was in the news for a little bit. You know, we got so much other crazy shit going on. It's hard to keep track of everything. But I thought that was kind of funny that these would happen and they'd get the publicity, and Donald Trump's not even in an office yet, especially since Donald Trump and Horman have talking about sending the National Guard into California and kicking those people out. But here we are with Joe Biden's administration and ICE going into California and hauling people out.
Well, the only thought, like I hadn't heard about it, so this is just off the top of my head. But I wonder if by doing it, if Joe Biden wasn't trying to take maybe a little bit of the wind out of Donald Trump's sails by doing it now. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it, if these are people who shouldn't, who have crossed, illegally, and I don't know their situations. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if they're trying to seek asylum or what have you. But by them doing this, and they're already going into California, maybe they're just trying to do it ahead of Donald Trump doing it. So that way, when they say, well, we're going after California, people in California can go, yeah, but Biden did too. Big deal.
Yeah. Or maybe trying to do it more humanely than what Donald Trump and
That
Tom
could be
Horman
too.
might be willing to do too. Yeah. We're a week away when this airs on Sunday. We're a week away. It's the 19th Today would be the 12th, so 7 days would be the 19th. We're a week away from Donald Trump's campaign rally on the 19th. And this is confusing a lot of people. Why would you have a rally the day before the inauguration? Still a lot of questions about that. Do you have any thoughts on why that would be? I mean, I have some thoughts, some of them nefarious and some of them just stupid, but I don't know.
The two that I've primarily thought of when it comes to doing this rally is one, he misses being in front of a big crowd.
Yeah.
He wants the crowd, he wants the cheering, he wants the adulation, he wants an arena full of people there to hear him speak for 3 hours and say nothing. Beyond that, I think he's trying to get a crowd to DC, figuring if they show up to see me on the 19th, they'll be there on the 20th for me. So I
Yeah.
got a nice
I
big
think so
crowd for
too.
my inauguration. And I don't know if this is part of his strategy, but I could see it where he's hoping to get a big crowd. And then if he doesn't get a big crowd to fill an arena, that it would give them some time to maybe get a crowd for his inauguration at the
Buy
last
a
minute.
crowd.
Yeah, do whatever they have to do to get people into the audience at the inauguration. So it's not just 10 people standing around going, "Yay!"
Yeah. I have a feeling they get a crowd because all these people think they won big by getting Donald Trump reelected. But, there's still those people out there. As we sit and talk right now, there's still those people out there that think something's going to happen at the last minute. Donald Trump will not be inaugurated. You and I both are skeptical of that. We'd love to see it, but I just don't see how that happens. But a couple of interesting things happened. I think I brought this up on the live. Um, Marjorie Taylor Greene was out talking about the inauguration. And she was saying things like, I hope we get there. We're working very hard. I know you're scared about what you've heard or seen. I don't know what she's talking about there unless people are listening to what some of these left folks are saying about keeping him out. If they're just paranoid about this, is Donald Trump paranoid on the 19th? If something should happen, that he has a crowd of people out there to reenact January 6th? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that anything's going to happen at the last minute because I don't believe it's going to happen. But it wouldn't surprise me if Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and all the Trump-fucks were dumb enough to buy into it and try to ready themselves if it should happen.
Well, I like you. I don't think anything's going to happen last minute, but I would love nothing more than January 19th, January 20th. Hell, it could be uh what would it be? 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, right before the inauguration is supposed to happen, that something breaks. I would love to have to come out and make a TikTok saying, I was wrong, Donald Trump won't be inaugurated in half an hour. I would love to do that. Don't see it happening. But I
I will say
think,
this. I'll make this challenge to you, Eric. If and when something happens to keep Donald Trump from being inaugurated, you and I will come back on the podcast and say, we are absolute dumb fucks. We were totally wrong, and I'm happy as a motherfucker because of it.
yep, I would make that admittance 100%, no questions asked. Just don't see it happening. But I think Marjorie, like you were saying, Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the like, I think they're just dumb enough to buy into anything that they're hearing about from left-leaning creators that something's going to happen, that they might be paranoid. But not only are they dumb enough, that's what they would do. That's what they did.
Right.
So it's easy for them to think that, oh my God, something's going to happen, because a lot of times when you're like, when you think about what's going to happen, you put yourself into that situation. Well, if it was going to be me and I was going to make that choice, this is what I would do. And I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah, no. And if that's true, if they're just paranoid based on what they're hearing in the ether, we should take note of that. They're that easy to fluster. So for the next 2 years, we should fluster the fuck out of them with a bunch of stupid conspiracy theories, a bunch of rumors, and just fuck with their heads constantly.
Well, we heard from them for 4 years This is
Yeah.
coming. That's coming. This Supreme Court case. This is going to happen. This date's going to happen. And uh, Joe Biden's going to be out of office. Donald Trump will be back. Just you wait. Just you wait. Maybe we should use that as our catchphrase for the next 4 years. Kamala Harris will be president. Just you wait.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not going
I
to.
think
I'm not going
I'd
to
agree.
do it because I don't want to sound like one of the dumb fucks. But it flusters the fuck out of them. Like it'd be kind of hilarious.
Well, I know that the things that they do and say they know are wrong. They just say it because they want what they want when they want it, and because I will tell you this. Here's the thing I know about narcissists. They're very easy to manipulate. Very easy to manipulate. I've told this story. My dad was a narcissist and he was an incredible salesman. He made a lot of money in the 80s, way more than most people anywhere in my purview. He made a lot of money. Okay. He was what you might call a super salesman. Okay. But what I found out about him, he was an easy mark when it came to selling him because he bought into everything. And he thought, well, if I believe it, then it's got to be true because I'm a fucking genius. And that's the thing with somebody like Donald Trump, it isn't hard to get in his head. And that's what was so valuable with these convictions and the sentencing. He, whether he gets punished or not, it doesn't matter. That's in his head. He can't twist it. He can't divert or distract from it. It's there, it's stuck, and it's eating at him so much that he's talking about appealing it. Now, we talked about this in the live. Appealing it's probably the dumbest thing he could do because, first of all, he's got no punishment. He should walk away and say, I'm lucky I got away with it. But he wants to appeal it just so he can say he's not a loser. And as we talked about, if he does appeal it and he gets a new trial, we're looking 3, 4 years out when he'll no longer be president. And then if he loses that appeal, he could legitimately be sentenced to a legitimate fucking punishment like jail.
Oh yeah, this is. I said this about him appealing, trying to prevent the sentencing. Same problem. If he would have been successful to prevent the sentencing, he basically had the judge saying, "We're not going to punish you. Just show up so we can close this out and be done, and it's going to be performative." But his ego couldn't take it.
Right.
So he kept trying to say, well, let's push the sentencing out. Let's delay it. Let's delay it till I'm no longer president. Well, if he would have gotten his way, the minute the next president was in, no matter what situation caused it, short of Donald Trump dying, they could have said, okay, in a week we're having a trial, we're having a hearing. You're coming in for sentencing. Guess what, Donnie? You're getting 34 years in prison, 1 year for every count, served consecutively. You'll
Well,
never see the
and
light of day again.
let's be honest, when he was trying to appeal that sentencing thing, he wasn't really trying to win an appeal. He was trying to delay it till after the 20th, where he could just throw it out and just forget about it, much
Well,
like he wants to do with the reports.
yeah. Well, and it wouldn't have been thrown out if he would have been successful. They would have gotten to the 20th and said, "Well, you're not president, so we're going to have to delay it until you're not president." At least that's the way I
Right.
understood it.
Yeah,
But
you're probably right.
he would have thought that was a win. Whenever he delays something, he just wants to buy himself enough time because he thinks he's a genius. We've talked about it before, and he always says, "Well, if I can get myself just 3 more weeks, I can figure out a way to make it happen. If I get two
Absolutely.
more weeks, I'll figure it out." Still having no plan as to how he's going to figure it out, but he figures he'll pull something out of his ass in 2 weeks and get himself another 2 weeks.
And we have to say, as much as we hate to say it, the delay tactics, for the most part, worked. It fucking
They
worked.
did.
And does that not tell you, isn't that an interesting commentary on our judicial system? I mean, I think that's one thing we've learned with Donald Trump and the time he's been around. Our judicial system is fucking weak. It's inequitable. The whole idea that no one is above the law, we know is categorically bullshit, and so does everybody in this country.
Yeah, he was able to delay everything, in part because he had unique to him arguments. The I was president, immunity, this, that, and the other. And then he had the simple fact that he is a supposed billionaire and he had access to money. I say supposed because most billionaires don't grift at every opportunity and fleece their supporters for more money. They just make money. But because he had money, he was able to, okay, well, I'm paying you high priced lawyers, buy me, put in 3, 4, 5 motions that are going to take time. Even if the judge denies all of them, it'll buy us 3, 4 months. That's what they were doing. People like you and me don't have the kind of funds that Donald Trump did to be able to buy that kind of time, because you'd be paying attorneys hourly rates for every hour and everything else. And before you knew it, your legal fees would have stacked up to a point where you couldn't afford it.
Well, and when the trials first started, I never imagined that he would get out from underneath it, that he'd be able to delay it long enough. But here's where I failed. I failed because I trusted that the judicial system was as strong as we were led to believe. I didn't think he'd um, be able to sit on his ass for 2 years. I thought Merrick Garland might be a good attorney general. Again, I was wrong. And lastly, I assumed the electorate in this country was smarter than they are. So those were my mistakes. Those were the fatal flaws. And I take responsibility for being wrong about it. But me being wrong isn't the problem. It's the other shit that's the problem.
I agree with you. And for most of that, I was in the same line of thought. I didn't think he'd get out from under it. And I thought for sure once he got convicted, I thought the Republicans were going to find a way to not select him as their nominee, that they wouldn't put him up.
Absolutely.
But they've gotten rid of all of the good Republicans out of the party. The normal Republicans are gone. Now, after Donald Trump, it's going to take them a while. They'll come back. But it's going to take time. And that's part of the problem with this country. Like everyone asks, why can Donald Trump be president while being a felon when you can't hold this job or that job as a felon? Because it doesn't say you can't, because they never thought a felon would get this far along, that either of the parties would ever put up a felon as a nominee for president, or that the public would vote for one.
Yeah, I get that question all the time. How can he be president if he's a convicted felon? And that's a good question, because you and I couldn't get a job at a shoe store if we were fucking felons. It's just the way it is. So how can he be president? And it sounds like a bullshit answer, but just what you said was because nowhere in the Constitution does it say you can't be elected president if you're a felon. And again, like you said, it's because nobody thought anybody would fucking do that. So we've kind of gone beyond the pale here and done the unthinkable, according to our forefathers.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I've been saying a couple times in my own lives, I think I did a couple TikToks on it too. I think after Donald Trump is out of office, you're going to see some changes, and they're going to come quick. You're going to see probably 1 or 2 constitutional amendments. I would not be surprised if they put some changes in because of Donald Trump.
Oh, I agree.
I think there's going to be
even the
probably
Republicans will be
saying,
on that board with that. Even the Republicans will be on board with that.
Yeah, if it's as bad as it could be, I think you're going to see something about no felon being president. And you might, depending on how 2028 goes, if he is still around and in office, and he tries to run, even though he legally can't, because the amendment says elected twice, not twice consecutive. I wouldn't surprise me if they put in something about that in a new amendment, just to clarify it, so there's never a confusion about it ever again. And just some other things, maybe clearing up the 14th Amendment, Section 3, where they clarify how that is applied. I think there's going to be some stuff and some laws and some other things that are going to come out after Trump is out of office, all because of Donald Trump being elected a second time and showing the cracks we have in our system. Our form of government is pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's
No.
pretty good. We just need to fix a few cracks.
Well, you make a good point about the 14th Amendment. It says very specifically if this person is an insurrectionist or gave comfort to an insurrectionist, he cannot hold office. Okay, fair enough. But who's going to stop him? That wasn't identified. It wasn't that Congress was going to stop them or the DOJ or anybody else. Who's going to stop him? It's fine to say that he can't be in office, but there's got to be some fail-safe to keep him out of office. And that's what some people are waiting for now, something that's going to come out of the blue. And that's why I'm a little suspect about it, because I don't know how they're going to do it, even if it's an option, even if it's all true, even if he did do all these things, and we know he did, how are you going to fucking pull it off?
Yeah, I don't know. The reason it's not in there as to how is because, well, one of the reasons is looking back at history. It wasn't until more modern history did we have the modern primary system that we
Yeah.
have now. Up and when it was when the 14th Amendment was written by itself, typically the parties got together, they voted themselves, and they decided who was going to run as the candidate for that party. So when they wrote it that way, they based it around the parties doing things the way they were doing them at the time. They never imagined we'd go to a direct primary system like what we have. So they assumed that the two parties or any party would say, okay, well, it says here you're ineligible, so we're not going to run you. We'll run you instead.
Right.
And they were going to police themselves. It's not written that way, but I'm assuming that's what they did.
You would assume so. And that amendment was passed in 1868. So it's been a while. And as far
Yeah.
as I know, it's never been used on a president. I think it has
No.
been used on other political figures, though.
I think it might have been, but it was right around the time when it was passed, because it was all about people who were involved in the Civil War on the Confederate side, um, not giving them a seat back at the table, in Congress basically, or in the presidency or anything.
Yeah, I'm just punching it up here and see. It says, yes, the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution has been executed in several ways. Um, Disqualification, there's a bunch of them. There's the Loving versus Virginia case, Brown versus the Board of Education, but disqualification from public office. The 14th Amendment's disqualification clause has been used to disqualify people from holding public office, including Kenneth Worthy and Coy Griffin. Now, I don't know what those specifics are. So it has been used. So then the question would be, if it has been used with public office before, how did they enforce it then? Who's the one that said, okay, we got to do this and enact it? Because it talks about Congress trying to retract it by voting by 2/3 in the House and the Senate, but it doesn't say how you enact it. So it would be interesting to see what they did back then. But then you have to add on to the fact that these are just political figures in lower level jobs, and now it's the president. There's a lot of complications to this whole thing, and that's why, if there's something going on, it's going to be fucking complex.
It's gonna be, and it better be airtight
Yeah,
because, uh, as the old saying goes, when you shoot for the king, you better not miss.
right.
Um, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna happen. But it wouldn't surprise me if after Donald Trump's president, if they don't pass something cleaning that language up a bit, and it wouldn't be the first time they've used an amendment to fix a previous amendment or something in the Constitution. I mean, hell, they passed an amendment to allow the direct election of senators. That wasn't something that was originally done that way. Like we change things all the time, or not all the
Right.
time, but that's the intent of an amendment.
Well, and let's be honest, if he does what he says he's going to do, by once he becomes president and he pardons all the January 6th people, wouldn't that be giving comfort to insurrectionists? Now, people have said to me they weren't convicted of insurrection. There were at least two or three or four of them that were convicted of insurrection charges, if I remember right. Do you recall that?
I think so. I want to say it was people like Stuart Rhodes, Enrique Tarrio,
Right,
the
right.
big
The
leaders in
higher
some of the
ups.
groups. Um,
Yeah, I think you're right. That's who it was. So if he releases them, theoretically, he's breaking the 14th Amendment.
Now, in theory, this is just something I came up with off the top of my head here. But if they're the only ones who were charged, if he releases the rest and not those three or four that got the insurrection charge, could he try to skate around that just enough and still say, well, see, I released all the rest, but those guys, they were insurrectionists. They're too much.
Yeah, well, that's assuming Donald Trump's smart enough to do that, but we know
We know
better.
he's not. We
He'll
know
fuck
he's not
himself
smart enough,
over.
but
He'll
his
fuck
advisors
himself over
might
one
be.
way or another. And it'd be interesting to see what the blowback is if he does release the the January 6 people. I'm not convinced he's going to, and the only reason I'm not convinced he made the promise, but he breaks promises all the time. I'm not convinced he would release those people because there's no money in it for him. There's nothing
Yeah,
to gain.
there's nothing in it to gain for him. And if he was going to do it, why didn't he do it when he was in office the last time? You know, there was still 2 weeks where he could have pardoned them all ahead of him leaving office and done it. He didn't because they failed him. He was mad at him. He's not going to. They didn't do what he wanted them to do. They weren't successful. I don't think he's going to pardon them. He's going to keep saying it until he has to, and then he's going to go look over there. Look at that
Yeah.
shiny thing.
Yeah. I'm gonna go buy Russia. It's definitely
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's all he does is distract. Well, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast with Eric. Eric, let people know where they can find you because more and more people are finding you on TikTok as long as TikTok's around, but you're on other platforms. So please let us know.
Okay. I am Analytical Iowan on TikTok. I also go by Analytical Iowan on YouTube. If you're watching the video version here on YouTube, down below I have it spelled. You can see how to spell it. You can find me here on YouTube. I'm on Blue Sky, Analytical Iowan. Um, I'm still working with Clapper a little bit. Haven't I'm trying to remember to post all my stuff over there, but it's a little clunky. Um, Analytical Iowan on Clapper as well. Looking at Lemon 8 as the maybe TikTok replacement. Haven't done anything with it yet, but I do have an account, also Analytical Iowan there. With the exception of Lemon 8, all of them are on my link tree. If you find me in any of the spots, TikTok, Blue Sky, YouTube, Clapper, I have my link tree up and it has access, all the links to all the rest of my stuff on there. And I do have a few, at the very bottom, I have a link to another link tree that I have for affiliated creators. That's where you can find links to get to TJ the plumber. You can get to Will, and I have a link to the Rational Boomer link tree. That way, if you find me, you can find at least a few of the other people I'm connected with. Um, Trying to make it a little easier to find everybody because we're going to need all the help we can get.
Absolutely. And if you aren't watching Analytical Iowan as yet, you should, because I do. If you like me and you listen to me, you should be listening to Analytical Iowan because I am. I get a lot of great information from him. And he has a different perspective or a different approach to the way he does things. He's more specific, more detail oriented. I'm more a big picture guy. But it's very valuable, and I would definitely check it out. So thanks to Eric for joining us today. For those of you listening, thanks for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.